Well, Silverstone just has a way of always delivering. I don't think. Well, I don't remember the last time there was a boring British Grand Prix. Then again, I've only been watching since 2016 properly, so I've probably missed a fair few, but still, the race we had this past weekend was an absolute banger. I mean, sure, there was plenty of time spent under the safety car, but there was enough racing that we got one of the best races of the season. Practice was a bit of a mixed bag. Ferrari looked strong the entire time in practice. Of course, in practice 2, Lando Norris got the fastest lap, and it looked like that he was going to be the strongest driver of the weekend again, but he wasn't quite. And although he did end up winning the British Grand Prix, which I'm happy about, but he wasn't the strongest driver this weekend. It seems that he sort of peaked in free practice too, but the moment he got the lead after Piastri had to serve his penalty, that was quite... well, he was quick. He was really quick. Maybe not still quite as quick as Piastri though. So all during free practice, Ferrari are looking the team to beat almost, with McLaren looking like they're potentially going to be on the back foot, and then qualifying comes around, and Ferrari just put in another P5, P6 again, just miles behind the two McLarens, and also Max Verstappen. The Red Bull had looked nowhere this weekend, but the Red Bull, they took off some downforce, apparently putting on a Monza spec rear wing almost. And yeah, it helped get Max a scintillating pole in the dry, but then along comes the race, which is mostly wet, and suddenly Max doesn't have the pace really. I mean, sure, he held on to the lead at the beginning, but he just didn't have the downforce as the rain came down harder. And you need downforce, especially in the rain. It was quite a race to watch. The battle between Max and Oscar, and later Lando and Max. I mean, Max was still trying to drag that tractor to a position it probably didn't deserve to be in, and then he spun at the second safety car restart, which ended his weekend, essentially, ended his chances of being on the podium. And that second safety car restart is the focal point of the weekend, really, because Oscar was on course to take a victory and to re-extend his gap back to where it was before Austria, in the championship standings, that is. But he made one stupid mistake. He's not infallible. Sure, he may seem cool as a cucumber. People are calling him the next Kimi Räikkönen, the next Iceman. But he's not. He makes one mistake that ruins his chances of winning. Braking too hard in low visibility conditions. Max nearly ran into the back of him. He came to a stop so quickly. Everyone thought he had an issue. Oh, Piastri's going slow. Has his engine broken down or something? Nope, he just plowed on the brakes. Practically picked up an anchor and threw it out the side. And Max had to take avoiding action, briefly overtook Oscar in those conditions. He was lucky to not crash into him, because then they both would have been out of the points and Lando would have had a massive gap over Oscar in the championship, which is something Oscar probably wouldn't want. And so Oscar learns of this penalty, that he's been given a 10-second penalty for this move, for yanking on the brakes far too hard in these conditions, almost causing Max to crash into him. He's obviously a bit miffed about it. But then what he says afterwards is the kind of thing that people have been hating on Lando for since Hungary last year. If you don't remember Hungary last year, there was a bit of a strategy kerfuffle with McLaren. They achieved a front row lockout in qualifying, and then on the race start, Oscar managed to jump Lando, who had got pole. Later on in the race, McLaren gave Lando pit priority, which allowed him to undercut Oscar. They then started telling Lando to give the position back to Oscar, even though it was their fault that Lando ended up leading the race again. And Lando, obviously, quite understandably, didn't want to give up the position. I mean, he was the closest to Max in the championship at that point. He wanted the extra points. Who can blame him? And of course, he wants to win a race. Who doesn't in Formula 1? Eventually he relented, but apparently the complaining he did over the radio, the whining, is apparently enough to make him an egotistical jerk that everyone now seemingly hates, or at least everyone on r/Formula Dank. They hate Lando there, simply because he wants to be a racing driver. And Oscar did something that I feel is a bit more inexcusable. Sure, he was being hot-headed, but it goes to show that he's not so cool about this championship challenge as he might appear to be from the outside. What he asked on the radio around lap 44? 46? To his team, and I'm gonna paraphrase here because I don't quite remember the exact words he used, but essentially he says, if the team thinks that penalty was unfair, we should swap Lando and myself so we can go racing. Like, Lando had no part in that. Again, he had no fault in the Hungary incident, and he had no fault in this incident. Why should Lando have to pay for someone else's mistakes? Which is what happened in Hungary, and is what Oscar wanted to happen in the British Grand Prix. So, Oscar isn't quite as cool the cucumber as everyone thinks he is. Like, people have definitely had their opinions of him shaken somewhat by him saying that, and sure, he cooled off afterwards and started joking about it, but Lando got a lot more hate for less. So, I want to start seeing people start hating on Oscar for this, please. Like, come on. If Lando gets the hate for being an egotistical jerk, for not wanting to give up the race win that he had been gifted to by his team, why then should Oscar and his much more egregious transgression just get ignored and brushed under the rug? No, people should start hating on Oscar for that too. Unless you're just going to be a hypocrite about it. So yeah, Oscar, not as comfortable with the championship. Lando, looking strong. Maybe not as strong this weekend. He was definitely the slower of the two McLaren drivers this weekend, but Oscar decided to ruin his own chances at winning and gave Lando a scintillating home victory. Everyone in England liked that, and everyone at r/Formula Dank is crying about it, because there was literally a meme that got posted there. If Max wins, yes. If Oscar wins, yes. If Lewis Hamilton wins, yes! If Lando wins. What's the weather like today? Lando haters crying again. Good to see. I love it when Lando wins because those haters just love the salty tears of the haters. And Oscar, maybe try to drive a bit cleaner next time. But even I have to admit that Lando Norris's home victory, as great as it was overshadowed by the man who stood on the third step of the podium, Nico Hülkenberg. 239 Grand Prix starts, has only ever finished a best of 4th 3 times in his entire career since it began in 2010. Until today, or yesterday, as at the time I record this, Nico Hülkenberg finally has a podium to his name, releasing him of that unwanted stat of most Grand Prix starts without a podium. That now falls to the man who was formerly in second place, Adrian Sutil, with 128 starts, but it's still somewhat of an unwanted record. Nico has now completely blown the previous record for longest wait for a podium out of the water. Carlos Sainz originally had to wait 101 Grand Prix starts to finally finish 3rd place at the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2019. Nico Hülkenberg blowing that out of the water with 239 starts to finally get a podium. But at least he got a podium, which is more than you can say about some of these other drivers in the past. Definitely a more deserving podium sitter than Lance Stroll, that's for sure. Oh, Nico. Like, I had to cheer him on. I was desperately hoping that he would maintain the gap between himself and Hamilton. And as the laps ticked down, I knew it was becoming more and more probable. And soon enough, with like 2-3 laps to go, it was almost as a certainty. All he had to do was keep it clean, keep it on the track, not make any mistakes, and he delivered! In a kick Sauber as well! A team that hasn't had a podium since 2012! Unbelievable stuff. I predicted Sauber would be last in the championship this season, and for a while it was looking like that was going to be the case. And then they brought along an upgrade, and they've been mega. They've outscored Red Bull over the past 4 or 5 Grand Prix. I mean, sure, part of that has been due to the Red Bull cars being having some rather unfortunate circumstances, being punted out of the race, or making mistakes, spinning, and of course the fact that the second Red Bull needs to be driven by a Max Verstappen clone instead of Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson. Red Bull, Sauber, looking pretty strong now and sitting pretty in 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. Not quite a comfortable gap. Racing Bulls are still a pretty strong team. They had a pretty shocking weekend though, double DNF after 2 separate crashes for their drivers. Not really either of their drivers' faults either. They'll be coming back strongly in Belgium next time out. We've got 3 weeks to wait. Ugh, massive gap. What a race. Probably the best of the year so far. If only for Nico Hülkenberg finally standing on the podium. That was the standout moment of the weekend. I mean, don't get me wrong, fair play to Lando. congrats to Lando for winning the British Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix. I'm overjoyed for him, but I'm not doubly overjoyed for Hulkenberg. Oh, it's sort of not been Lando's weekend, has it? His home Grand Prix, winning it, he should be the focal point, the one that everyone's focusing on, and instead people are looking at the guy in third place. Quite unfortunate. Even at his own Grand Prix, he still gets overshadowed by someone. But at least he won it this time, unlike last year. Last year was a strategy disaster class, which handed victory to Lewis Hamilton on a platter. This weekend, another British driver has won the 13th. Yeah, Lando. Maybe the Lando Norris era isn't quite so over as people seem to think it is. Elsewhere down the order, it was a decent race for Aston Martin. I mean, Lance Stroll was running P3/P4 for a while, then fell down the order as his soft tyres fell off the cliff. Ended up finishing P7. Fernando Alonso being sabotaged by his team to the point that he wasn't happy with a third point finish in a row, even if it was just 9th, so, you know, I wouldn't be happy with just 2 points if I was expecting more, especially if I was a double world champion like Fernando Alonso. And that means they have now drawn level with Racing Bulls on 36 points. The Racing Bulls have had the better finishing position, so they're currently 7th in the championship, and Aston Martin 8th. Sauber, of course, have moved up to 6th with that podium. Puts them potentially in striking distance of Williams if they can continue to score well, as Williams have sort of fallen off the cliff somewhat, though they did extend their gap just a little bit, with Alex Albon finishing P8. Ferrari, well, it was a race of two halves, 2 different races. Hamilton, his 12-year podium streak coming to an end, still finishing P4 to get the team 12 points, but poor old Charles Leclerc had an awful race, finishing outside of the points, but at least enough to get them ahead of Mercedes into a much more comfortable position in P2 in the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes only gained a single point this weekend as they just got the strategy wrong, and George Russell only finishing P10. Red Bull, Max, only getting 10 points from P5. He could have got at least P3, made a mistake, and his claim, but blamed it on his car's undrivability. Haas scored nothing. Bit of a bad weekend for Haas. And Alpine actually managing to score P6, which isn't a bad result, but they're still 10th and last at the Constructors' Championship and still 10 points clear, 10 points behind, rather, of Haas in 9th. It's going to be a pretty big fight for 5th place in the Constructors' Championship as the season goes on, as we are now officially at the halfway point of the season. And in the Drivers' Championship, of course, Lando Norris has now shaved the gap to 8 points, which is not quite enough for him to overhaul the lead next time out in Belgium. If he leads home in McLaren 1-2 yet again, he'll still be 1 point behind Oscar. So, yeah, Oscar has to finish in P3 next time out for Lando to take the lead at the very least. Either that or he overtakes Oscar in Hungary. He just has to keep winning. And still advantage Oscar, but Oscar's definitely starting to feel the pressure now. Both of them on course to potentially, well, one of them is going to be a first-time champion this year. It's just a matter of who at this stage, because Red Bull are not looking like the challengers anymore. at all. So ends a scintillating weekend. I know I've used that word a bunch of times in this video already, but I can't wait for Belgium. Let's see how that one goes. It's going to be a big fight between the two McLarens, I reckon. And who's going to win? Lando or Oscar? Time will tell. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and good night.